How's it going, guys? Yasukeh here. So I've been running a completely different Tryndamere build from the standard, and I think this is just by far the strongest build that you can go. And the best part is, it's getting way stronger next patch. Every single one of the items in my core build is getting massively buffed for Tryndamere's use case, so this build is going to be just far and away the best build on Tryndamere, if it isn't already, which it is. So I just wanted to explain why this build makes so much sense, even though it has a ton of items that Tryndamere doesn't normally go. Like, none of these items are items that you typically think of as Tryndamere items, and this is what got me to Diamond 1 in Korea with 140 ping and disconnecting every single game, and I did this all in less than 150 games. It's what got me to really easily just got to really high Masters MMR on a couple of different accounts, on 2 different accounts. That was really easy, just so much free climbing, and there are aspects of the build that other high elo players have been taking on Tryndamere that have been very nice, and it's just overall been very, very powerful. And so the build basically is Berserker Greaves, obviously, into Ravenous Hydra, into Essence Reaver seconds, and then most of the time, Eclipse third. So the Mythic can be a little bit situational depending on what you go. Like, if you're against a little bit more of a tanky team, you can justify going like a Kraken Slayer. If you need to be catching up to people, you can sometimes go Stridebreaker. Before the nerfs, Jockshow was a viable option. But yeah, you have a ton of potential in what kind of Mythic you can go, but I found that just Eclipse far and away exceeds all of those. And best part is, Eclipse, Essence Reaver, Hydra, all getting buffed for Tryndamere's use case next patch. So the idea behind a lot of the items is that, 1, Ravenous Hydra is just way too powerful on Tryndamere. The best part about how Tryndamere used to work before the item rework in Season 10 was back when you had Tiamat, you could just vacuum up all of the camps in the map, and it would be so easy to not only deny the enemy team gold, but just gain such a large gold lead for yourself by just funneling yourself. And with Ravenous Hydra, that's back. The extra sustain also makes it just so much safer to play in so many matchups. Like, you get so many times where you are fighting some kind of, like, assassin. They get you really low, you sustain back up, and then all of a sudden you're just back to full health. And I was looking at going Kraken Slayer second, which is typically what Tryndamere players do when they build Ravenous Hydra, is Kraken Slayer. The problem with Kraken Slayer is that it doesn't really synergize with Hydra. Like, Kraken ideally is paired with something like Phantom Dancer. Like, those items have massive synergy because you want the extra attack speed. So the best part about Ravenous Hydra, which is not something that's been nerfed. They nerfed the sustain, they nerfed this, they nerfed that, but they haven't nerfed the amount of AD the item gives by any significant margin. So the biggest reason why Hydra is so impressive as an item is the amount of AD it gives you. It gives you up to 85 AD with just a really cheap item, which is just so massive for one item. And so the question is, what item scales well with AD? The answer to that is Essence Reaver. The Essence Reaver proc scales off of AD at a really good ratio, so the AD is being maximally utilized with Essence Reaver. And then also just Essence Reaver, the Sheen proc is effectively another crit that you can crit on top of. So you'll effectively be doing like 3 times an auto attack's damage if you get Sheen crit auto off. It's so powerful. The item is really cheap, and the item has everything that Tryndamere wants. It gives you crit, it gives you ability haste, and it gives you a lot of AD. And Sheen proc is also amazing. And the thing about Ravenous Hydra lets you farm camps really quickly. Essence Reaver lets you take turrets really quickly. And so the ability for you to take turrets and split push on the map is just unrivaled. And this item is just really strong early, it's really cheap, really effective. And that also pairs with the next item, which is Eclipse. And with Eclipse, you first want to be building your Serrated Dirk, the lethality item. And this is what the super early aggressive champions build, like Draven. Draven builds Essence Reaver into Dirk. and that's the strongest power spike you can possibly get for that amount of gold. And it's really, really dirt cheap. And best thing is, lethality also works against turrets. So once you get into that point to where you have your Dirk, your Essence Reaver, and your Hydra, you just instantly one-shot turrets, and it's just amazing feeling. And the best thing is that next patch, Essence Reaver is getting 10 AD for a 100 gold cost increase. Now, if you don't know how much a longsword costs, a longsword is 10 AD for 350 gold. So we, as Essence Reaver Tryndamere users, are gaining 10 AD for 100 gold at, which would normally be 3.5 times the price. So this item is getting massively buffed on Tryndamere. There are also some changes to Ravenous Hydra, where the ability haste is getting increased. And the Omni-Vamp is getting changed into Lifesteal. And now Omni-Vamp is strictly a better stat than what Lifesteal does. But Tryndamere doesn't really use Omni-Vamp that well at all. Like, his one ability is AoE, so he gains less value from it. The Cleave is still benefiting from the Lifesteal, so the AoE from the item is still benefiting. And Tryndamere benefits from Lifesteal just amazingly. That's where you're getting 90% of the sustain that this item gives you. So the item is losing more value from the Omni-Vamp to Lifesteal conversion. That doesn't affect Tryndamere at all, compared to the way that it affects most champions. And we're getting an extra little 5 ability haste on top. And that sounds really cool. That sounds like okay, you know? But another thing is that Eclipse is getting changed too. And the reason why we go Eclipse is that the shield is so powerful. It has a little like burst effect on it too. And it has movement speed on it. So the way that it allows you to play fights is just, it makes you feel so much safer. And it has that burst to where you get on an AD carry and like one auto attack and a spin is enough to make them be very, very scared and very chunked out. And the thing is that the item has sustain on it, but it didn't really feel that important for Tryndamere's use case to have sustain. Other champions might have benefited more from having the sustain, the lifesteal, the Omni-Vamp on it, but that wasn't really important for Tryndamere. So instead, their way of like nerfing or changing the item is giving it ability haste now. And so instead of having Omni-Vamp, it now has 15 ability haste. And the proc on it. So the shield damage and movement speed ability on it is going from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. Now, you already can proc it multiple times in a fight, but that is just a massive, incredible buff to the item. Like, it's cutting it by, like, 30-something% in terms of the cooldown from this to this. You're going to be proccing it way more in fights, and, like, those times where you're a little bit low and you want to go back into a fight, it gives you that safety to where, like, even though you're this amount of HP, or just a sliver of HP, you'll be able to live those fights, and you'll be able to do that way more often. And just that little burst is going to be so powerful, and I'm really looking forward to that kind of change on the item, and this is all of the buffs that the items are getting. Right now, it is the most statistically best build on Tryndamere. So, Tryndamere mid. Best mythic right now, statistically, by far, is Eclipse. Highest win rate. For the Rav Hydra, obviously really, really good first. highest win rate, and most picked. The second item, which is what we build, is Essence Reaver. Essence Reaver is the second highest win rate item. So this is really heavily underutilized by Tryndamere players. Like, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th. This is the 7th most popular item on Tryndamere. And it's so underrated. It gives you everything you want on Tryndamere. And people say, yo, hey, Yasukeh, this item has mana. Well, what I would say to that is that Tryndamere is always Tryndamere is always out of mana. So wouldn't it make sense for Tryndamere to have an item that gives him mana on auto attacks? Because Tryndamere likes to auto attack. So obviously getting an item like that would make you, would help with the issue of you being Also, champions like Rengar and Riven often went Essence Reaver early, because the item doesn't actually... You don't actually care about any of the mana on the item. Draven gets the item, but he doesn't really care about the extra mana that the item gives. So all of that is perfectly fine. And this guy right here has been crediting me with the recent success that he's had. So he ended the season D4, and now he's already climbing up all of the way to D1. And this is all with the builds that I've been going of Hydra, ER, Eclipse. And it's just been really powerful. I've been really enjoying it. And so, runes-wise, you can either go Phase Rush or Lethal Tempo. For most of the preseason, I was going Lethal Tempo, but I've kind of fallen in love back with Phase Rush, and it works for both of them. So, Kraken Slayer is ideally paired with Lethal Tempo. Like, you get more value from that. But the Eclipse build, it doesn't need to have that massive amount of attack. But you still benefit from the attack speed from Lethal Tempo. But then you also benefit massively from the movement speed buff, because all of your damage, a lot of your damage is front-loaded into the initial burst. So you can get that initial burst and then just kind of run out with Phase Rush, or run back in, or just do so much like maneuvering in the fight. It's just very, very powerful. And to go over a couple of the other item changes that are happening, the Infinity Edge and Navori are able to be used with one less crit item. Do not fall into that trap of thinking that you can rush, like, it to change your item build at all is not needed. If you are going to build Navori or Infinity Edge, that's something that you would do at any other point anyway. So a couple of the other item changes is that Mortal Reminder doesn't build out of Zeal anymore, which was really nice for us. And I was using it pretty often because it was very cheap and it gave a lot of stats. Even in times where the lifesteal wasn't, or the lifesteal reduction wasn't that important, it was still a very valuable item to go just because of how cost-effective it was. And it's always better to be building a worse item that is more cost-effective. The best way I could explain it is, there'd be times where I would build Stormrazor on Tryndamere. And Stormrazor, not a very good item, but I was building into Infinity Edge. So I had a BF sword and a crit cloak. And there's a soul fight coming up. And I only have enough gold to get the Stormrazor. I could either choose to build the Stormrazor and have a completed item, or just not be spending that entire 1k gold. And it's always better to steal that, to spend the gold and have that gold in completed items in your pocket than just running on components. So sometimes it's better to go items like that. So after the changes, I will probably be going Phantom Dancer next. Lord Dominic's, I believe, was also getting buffed. Yeah, the AD on Lord Dominic's. This is sometimes a bait item, but the thing is that if I'm going Hydra and Eclipse, that means my only crit item is ER in my first 3. So I need my next 2 items to be crit items. So typically, Cyrilda's is the best armor pen item on Tryndamere. However, if you don't have the crit because you're going other non-crit items, it'll be better to go Lord Doms. And the stats on Lord Doms are really underrated. It can potentially be a really good item, especially after this buff, extra 5 AD. 5 AD feels really nice to have. It's really a lot bigger of a thing than you would think it would be. But yeah, the fighting item changes. All of this is just going to end up being very, very powerful in Tryndamere. And I've really been enjoying it. So let me just show you a couple things in Practice Tool. Just show the value of it. Yeah, let me get that pulled up. Yeah, the amount that you can just farm right here is just insane. And so yeah, this point right here, once you get your ER and your little bit of lethality, you just melt through turrets. Those Sheen procs are basically critting turrets. So it's so valuable to have that. Make sure you use your spin and all that stuff for it, and you'll gain a ton of value. And so, yeah, that's going to be very, very nice. So you buy your gold. You go this. You almost always want to try to rush Berserker Greaves. They're just the most valuable item you can get. Then you go into Tiamat. You can build longswords if you don't have enough gold for this. Build longswords, build Vamp Scepter, build whatever works. Build this. And as soon as you go right here, you're going to have a really easy time just farming camps. So when you go to camps, one thing that you also want to do is, right before you kill everything, press Q. So that way you get all your fury back built up. And then every time you take a wave, you take a jungle camp. Go back to the wave, take the jungle camp. Take the wave, take the jungle camp. And this way, you'll often end up with well over 10 CS per game. It's so easily. And so then you go into Essence Reaver, incredibly. And when you build Essence Reaver, you typically want to build the Sheen first, because that gives you the crit on both champions and turrets. Make sure to use your Q. Like when you're attacking something, you can always just... You can use your Q mid-auto, and the Sheen will go off right there, which is very nice. So then when you're building this, always want to try to get your Dirk first. And then this is a really common spot that you'll end up in, is just right here. Sometimes it's... If you ever need to sell your Dorn's Shield to get a full item, you always want to do that. So that it will be there. And then after next patch, you're probably going to be wanting to go Phantom Dancer next. This build, you might notice, very little attack speed. So it's always been nice to get a Zeal item. This is very valuable. Then after you get this, you can either go for an IE. Bloodthirster is actually getting mega buff next patch. And I think that Bloodthirster is very valuable into team comps where you are against a ton of assassins. So lifesteal is getting a little bit reduced, but the shield is going from 50 to 320 scaling to 180 to 450. So it's getting 1.5 times its value almost, which is just massive. And its cost is also getting reduced, which is part of the lifesteal. So if you're against like an Evelynn, a Kali, some kind of burst assassin like LeBlanc, consider building a Bloodthirster. Because against those champions, you don't need damage, you need to not die. And not only will the shield guarantee that you don't get one-shot, but you're going to get low from their burst, and then all of a sudden you're going to be able to instantly get back to full on any wave, any jungle camp, and they'll have no way of continuing their damage. Can't tell you how many times I built Bloodthirster against an Eve. She pops her entire abilities on me. I barely live. I take away, and so Eve's typical play pattern then would be, wait a second, let her regen happen, and then go back in and kill you. As soon as she does that, I'm already full health because I just took a wave. So that's going to be really nice. I wouldn't consider building any other non-crit items. But then you can also go Lord Doms is a valuable option. Infinity Edge is always a good choice. The only thing about why I don't often go Infinity Edge is just the cost and build path. Make it a little bit awkward to build. But if I ever have enough gold to buy it and it just makes sense, then I will buy it. So that is just something to think about. And yeah, these are really the only kind of options you have. Once again, if you're a little bit low on gold while you're trying to build an IE or a Bloodthirster, just build the Stormrazor. That'll give you 3 items that have massive burst on hit, which will just make it very, very powerful. So I don't really think Navori is that needed, especially since the build is overall getting 20-25 ability haste increase just from the item changes. So that combined with what you already have, you'll have like 65 or something ability haste, which will... You don't really need Navori at that point. Whereas Navori is valuable if it's your only CD item, which is what the standard Tryndamere build does. But since there's already so much ability haste that we already have, we're just going to be way better off with that. So let me know what you guys think about the build. If you guys have been running it, been watching my stream, been running it yourself, let me know what you guys think. Enjoy the buffs. I am so excited for them, man. I am so excited. Next patch, or next micro patch, or whatever hotfix they're doing because they got fished. It's going to be amazing for us, bros. Looking for all of the Yasukeh bros, the Essence River bros, the Eclipse Brass to take over the entire world. So see you guys all in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye. And good night. Yeet.